This is the We Get Outdoors podcast. My name is Rob Yates and I am your host today. Welcome to this episode where we get to know mountaineer, sea kayak guide and snowboard instructor Chris Whittaker. In this episode we explore how a Brit has ended up living in a van in Canada while guiding in the outdoors. We learn about his upcoming 3-month sea kayak expedition where he takes on Canada to Alaska up the Inside Passage, and find out what his biggest piece of advice for you is to get more out of the outdoors. This is the We Get Outdoors podcast, and let's get into this episode.
This episode is brought to you by the We Get Outdoors tribe, where your next adventure is just one click away. You can join this, the fastest growing outdoor group on planet Earth, and become part of a tribe of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, sharing your adventures, their adventures, trips and insights, and helping to ensure you plan and have the most perfect adventures. Click on the link in the description below to join for free right now. So, Chris, we don't know each other very well, but the other day you came and joined our We Got Outdoors Facebook group and introduced yourself with, I don't know how many pictures it was in a collage of your feet sticking out the back of your van going down, was it the Pacific coast of the USA? Tell me about your van. Where's the idea come from? Where did you take it to? What's the journey been with
it? So I've been on quite a journey with my van over this last year. I've had a dream of living in a van for a long time. Actually, when I first passed my driving license back in the UK, I really wanted a van. I'm not really sure why, but I've just been drawn to them as a vehicle. I thought it'd be awesome. So when I was coming out to Canada, which is where I've spent the last year and a half, I had planned to buy a van, either turn it into a camper myself or and did that as a way to explore the surrounding area. So last year, around September time, where I was working, I just heard of one for sale at a nearby government dock car park on a very small island where there's no one around. But it was the perfect van with a for sale sign in it, super cheap. So the opportunity just put itself to me. It was right there. So I purchased this van off of a guy who had he had used it as a way to get back and forth from Vancouver City to Vancouver Island on the north end and then build his own off-grid home. So this guy took very good care of his van, used it as a work van, but there's nothing in the back of it. So I purchased this completely gutted out van and then figured out how to turn it into a camper myself. I'm not really a hands-on maintenance mechanic kind of guy. I actually don't really know a whole lot about that. So using a series of YouTube tutorials, blog posts that people had written and all these articles about how to do it, I eventually, chipped away, worked away, and over the next sort of few weeks to a month, I had turned it into a livable home in the back of this van. And that was just at the end of last year's summer season. It was then good to go. So my first trip, I had been working on Quadra Island, which is northeast of Vancouver Island in Canada. Then I drove a bit further to LA, and then I drove all the way back again to Whistler in Canada, just in time for the season. First trip was about 7,700 and something kilometers over the space of about a month and a half. And it was a pretty good introduction to van life and road tripping. And it was an awesome trip. I then kind of hibernated the van over winter because it's not winter ready. You need a lot more stuff if you want to be in the snow. And then after the winter season, I've been living in it since April.
Cool. And have you got it with you in Mexico at the moment?
I'd been in it all the summer, and it'd take me around the Rocky Mountains, all over BC, just into Alberta as well. And was amazing for the summer. However, I'm going to be back inside again during the winter season, and then my work visa ends in Canada next year, and I have quite a big kayak trip coming up. So I'm not going to be able to be in the van anymore. So the story kind of came to an end. We sort of parted ways. Hopefully, that will take on just as much as I did.
Cool. You mentioned a kayak trip. Tell me, whereabouts are you off to? What are you up to?
So next year, we're hoping to leave May 2020. My expedition partner and I, we're going to be leaving from Campbell River, which is a place on Vancouver Island, and we're going to kayak north on the Inside Passage. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's basically the shipping route on the inside of Vancouver Island that connects Seattle all the way up to Skagway in Alaska. We're going to kayak up there, and it's somewhere between 2 and 3 months, depending on how often we stop, where we want to check out, this and that. But it's a pretty big trip, and yeah, it's going to be a couple months long, just self-supported, kayaking, camping out the whole way there.
Cool. And have you kayaked on expeditions in that area before, or is this going to be a new venture?
I have through my work. So I've been working as a sea kayak guide for a number of years now. This specific location, the way how I met the partner I'm going with, we worked together this last summer and the year before as sea kayak guides around the Discovery Islands and a bit further north on the Johnstone Strait, which is one of the sections of the Inside Passage. But once we hit that point, I've not been any further north. So going up to Haida and then into Alaska, that's all new territory, so to speak.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I hope you're into fishing, because the salmon fishing up along there is pretty incredible.
Well, I had actually planned to do some fishing. So I got my license this year. I got all the gear. I figured, if I learn to fish now, I'll be saving myself money by catching all this fish. And in the space of a year, I have caught 0 fish that have been big enough to eat. I think maybe the fisherman life is not quite for me. I think there's actually a bit more skill involved than I thought. But in terms of the kayak trip, though, I was hoping to bring a rod along because it, gives us another source of food coming in. But actually, if you fish for salmon on that passage and then you're going to be camping out, the smell of the salmon is going to attract bears. So they can smell them a mile off. And even if you catch and clean and cook your fish somewhere away from your camp, the smell is still going to be on you. So the risk of attracting bears into the camp due to fishing is actually, it's too high a risk for it to even be worth fishing. It's a pretty dangerous area in terms of the wildlife there. Like there's some real big, scary animals. So yeah, we're going to do our best to keep those away from camp.
And keep those attractive smells for bears as far away as possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it came down to.
So tell me, you're originally from the UK, and we just said we were actually brought up not that far away from each other in the UK either, by some funny chance. Where did your love for the outdoors begin? Where did it all start?
Well, my path into the outdoors is a little different from most kayak guides or, professional outdoor instructors that you might meet. I didn't actually start doing any of these activities until I was 18. My friends and family around me, it just wasn't really something that anyone was doing. I grew up in the Midlands, so not so much in terms of mountains and big rivers. Obviously, you could just drive to Wales, which is a couple hours away, but wasn't really something anyone was doing. So I didn't know what to do at university. So I kind of wanted to take some sort of a gap year or a bit of time to figure out what to do. So I wanted to travel, and I wanted to figure out how I could travel and get paid at the same time to travel longer, and then eventually figure out what I wanted to do. So I Googled how to travel and get paid and came across kayak instructing as a thing that people do. So I booked myself onto I think it was like 12 weeks, a 12-week instructor training program. By the end of it, you get entry-level certifications, enough to then start a basic job in the industry. So I started working at a small lake near where I'm from, and as soon as I started doing these activities, I fell in love immediately. Kayaking was great, the hiking was great, climbing was awesome. So I started doing all this stuff, and then as I progressed, I started to meet more people in the industry, older people that have either quit their corporate job to start doing this, or people that have just been doing it their whole career. And I realized that I wasn't waiting to find a new career. Like, this was the one for me. It was totally possible to work in the outdoors for your entire life. It has so many opportunities. As soon as you open that door, there's so many different ways you can take it, whether it's through instructing and guiding itself, or like management roles and all these different kind of trips and expeditions you can get yourself into all over the world. So I quickly fell in love with it, and yeah, I couldn't imagine doing anything else now.
Excellent. How long have you been instructing for now then?
I'm 7 years.
Ah, cool. So whereabouts has it taken you? So you've gone from a lake in the Midlands of the UK. Whereabouts has it taken you?
So after that season, I then got another job in Essex, just outside of London, working with a lot of special needs charities, youth groups, and just children that are kind of at-risk youth, I suppose. I learned a lot of any good traits I have as an instructor, I'd put down to that company. Like, they did some real good training. But after that, I started working abroad. So I worked in France 2 separate seasons, so a summer and a winter season. I teach snowboarding as well. I've been over to China for 2 years, working in Japan during the winter season over there. I worked in Sicily, in Tanzania, and right now I'm here in Canada.
Or Mexico?
Well, I'm here in Mexico, but I'm not working.
So how do you get on in China and Japan with the language barrier whilst trying to keep people safe and upright in either a kayak or on a snowboard or something like that?
Well, very fortunately for us English speakers, pretty much every country in the world you can get away with English, which is it makes us very lazy. And I'm hoping to learn some Spanish. That's actually why I'm here in Mexico. But the companies I was working for, so in China, I was working for a company that provided outdoor education for international schools all across the country. So these students aren't necessarily Chinese. They could be from anywhere, but their school is an international school, so they follow the curriculum of either the UK or the US. So all of their schooling is done in English, which means all of our work was done in English too. But for any trip that I was leading, my assistant leader would be a Chinese person. So the company was split 50-50 of foreigners and Chinese people. So my assistant, they would cover things at restaurants, anything with the other local population, because that would have to be in Chinese. And then all of the trip planning, the finances, the actual communication between the schools and the students, that would be done by me, which could then be passed down to the team of instructors around that. So Chinese was needed in your personal life in China. You can't just go to the market and ask for a banana or an apple or whatever. Like, you need to say it in Chinese. Like, you need to be able to learn the language to survive yourself. But in terms of work, you could get away with English. And then Japan, same thing. The resort I worked in, which was Niseko, it's basically the foreigner resort, I guess, like the most international resort. I think it's mostly built on Australian money or Australian companies. So the teaching was actually done in English. And then even if you're a Spanish-speaking instructor, there's plenty of work for you there too, because you just work with the Spanish-speaking guests. So for certain places and certain resorts, you can get away with it. But when it comes down to your own personal travel, that's when you need to know the language.
It's very interesting as you get further out of, I suppose, Europe and North America, just how quickly you end up in places where people don't speak English. And as you say, for restaurants or food or even booking a train ticket somewhere, it just becomes a very interesting juggling act, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a necessity for sure. There's only so much hand language, sign language that you can do to book a train at a certain time to a certain place. You do need to learn the language. So fortunately for me, I picked up a fair bit of Mandarin over the 2 years. Not loads, not conversational, but I guess traveler's Mandarin is what they'd call it. Like I could get around. But that was 3 years ago now, so don't ask me to say anything.
I don't put you on the spot and ask you to order 2 beers and a glass of wine or something like
that. Well, you never forget how to order beer.
That's very, very true. And now Spanish is the language. You're on the Baja Peninsula at this point in time, and you quite quickly get to places there where English doesn't happen.
Dos cervezas, that's all you need, right?
That's it. You should order a couple of beers and you'll be all good. So, So tell me, what have you been up to, or what are you going to be up to over the next few months in this off season in Baja? Other than learning Spanish and drinking decent Spanish Mexican beer, what's the plan?
Well, for the off season, so for right now, my plan was I wanted to find somewhere that speaks Spanish, was fairly cheap, and I could surf. So I'm hoping to find a nice quiet surf town where I can just do some Spanish studying and then just get my surf on for the day. But on top of that as well, I do some freelance work as a writer and a photographer, and also work on my own website too. So I'm hoping to pick up a little bit of work that sort of funds my travel as I go. And then this work has basically been designed so I could do it anywhere. I work for a number of different outdoor adventure websites, so I just do a bit of writing for them. But other than that, mostly just exploring, hanging out, just travel around and see a new country.
Cool. So if we just keep wandering on in this little chat, I'm very interested about what's been your biggest piece of learning from this summer season guiding? What's the thing that you've taken away from it?
From this last season, let's have a think. So this last season, I've been working as a kayak guide, as I mentioned, off of Quadra Island. So it's a whole group of people with very interesting stories. They've done some really cool stuff. The groups we have, the trip is like self-filtering. The type of people that book on a trip to go and kayak with whales and with the wildlife and go and see that, people that want to spend the money on those kind of trips, they're going to be cool people and they're going to have just as many cool stories to share as everybody else. So I've really benefited from just kind of sitting back and listening to them and actually trying to delve a little bit deeper into their own personal lives and hearing their stories. And that's actually where the idea of coming to Mexico came from.
You are 100%. I was guiding a group quite a few years ago, about 10 years ago now. You're busy talking on the initial days about what people do when they're not kayaking. And one of the guests said he worked for Tesla. And Tesla wasn't really a big deal at that point in time, but it turns out that he was in charge of working with Elon Musk to design the Tesla car. And suddenly you find out you've got a genius in your kayak group who's a client. And you get fascinating conversations with clients which you'd never, ever would have had otherwise. It's kind of a privilege to do what we do, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We meet some really amazing people and often at the top of their field as well. We get geologists, we get marine biologists and whoever else. And, it can be nice to know that they're a geologist before you start telling them about the local geology, but so far they've confirmed everything I've told them true, so that's always nice to know. But often we get sort of specialists in those areas. I try and encourage them to also share with the, if you see it's awesome and you know about it, tell all of us as well, because they don't know, I might not know either, and then the next time I get a group, I can tell them, hey, this rock is blah, 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 and just share information with everybody. There's lots to learn.
There's always huge amounts to learn. On that note, if you had one piece of advice you could give to a climbing or mountaineering or kayaking enthusiast, maybe somebody who's listening to this podcast or this interview, What is your like golden piece of information or advice you could give to an enthusiast that would spur them on and help them with their pursuit of their hobby?
I would say the most important thing is to just go and do it. All the time, I get people telling me, I'm so jealous you're doing this and that, or I wish I could do this, or I've always dreamed of going and doing this thing. Don't be afraid to just, if that's what it is, or go kayaking. And, if you're not confident enough to do things by yourself, then just book on a course. There's plenty of intro level courses going. So if you book on a course, or like if you've always been, wanting to kayak, but you don't know how to get into it, find a local course, book on that. They'll teach you all you need to know. Join a club, and then you can keep kayaking. And then eventually you're at the place where you're happy to go by yourself. And then you'll be the one getting all the questions of how do you do it? Or I wish I could do that.
And I often encourage people to take it steady and feel their way, because often people end up throwing themselves in things that are far too big for themselves, and then that puts them off. I think if people just back off a little bit and take it one little step at a time, you kind of learn a bit on every step, and then suddenly you're in that super cool environment or that sporty environment that you've always dreamt of.
Yeah, if you've always been afraid of putting yourself out there, then you're going to continue to be in that state. So yeah, just go and do it. Find a course, find someone to take you, and eventually you'll get there. And I think not being afraid to go solo is a big thing as well. Like, obviously, find something in your ability level. So find a short beginner hike, for example, maybe a board walk goes wrong, and then you realize it's no big deal, and actually going by yourself can sometimes be even better than with a group. Pretty much everything I've done has been solo so far, and if I was still waiting for the friends that were meant to join me that very first time, I would have never left.
It's all a balance of risk and reward, isn't it, really? And understanding what those risks are and what rewards you can get out the other side. So, future of the outdoors, future of guiding, what do you think the next big thing is likely to be?
So I think the next big thing, we're actually already in that phase of going that way, is just the sheer number of people that are starting to get involved within the outdoors. There's more and more tourists, there's more and more people that's going to these places of natural beauty and are actually wanting to spend their time and their vacations on nature trips rather than going to the beach or going to the city. And just more and more people going into the outdoors. And it's a bit of an interesting debate, because some people say that it is kind of ruining a few places, which for sure, more foot traffic to certain places is going to have a negative effect. But I think the bigger picture of more people getting involved in nature can only be a good thing, really. So,
and what about people's fears and concerns of more people getting lost, more damage done, more car parks overflowing? You think those are legitimate fears, or just people who are being negative about stuff?
I think they are definitely fears, and they are definitely things that are going to happen. More people means more traffic. More people that don't know what they're doing are going to start going off of paths. So yeah, more people is going to bring a negative effect in certain ways. More foot traffic in certain areas. You always see these article titles: "Is social media ruining the outdoors?" And in some respects, yes, but I think as a bigger picture of more people wanting to go into nature, this is kind of like a conscious shift and change of people. They're not going to the beaches anymore. They're less focused on consumerism, and it's more about experience, getting into nature and into the outdoors. So parks are going to have to deal with that in ways of more defined footpaths and trash cans to stop litter, and obviously educating these people that aren't at home in that environment on how to behave. But it just means people like us or people that have more know-how in the outdoors are just going to have to go a little bit further to find those quiet spots and find those places where there aren't tourists. So, into the backcountry, which then also leads to more backcountry huts having to be made, etc. So it's overall, again, negative in the sense of all these people going, but it's going to happen. And I think it's better than all these people not going. You want people to connect to nature. You want people to know how important the environment is and how important the climate is. And, it's a change that is long overdue. You want people thinking in this kind of way. And it's just how it is managed is going to be the next big thing in the outdoors, how to deal with this increase in traffic so everyone can still feel that connectivity with nature that you only get through, being alone or being with a small group. And overall, nature is for everybody. You can't tell people not to go. And if the regular person is going to start going there, then I think that's awesome.
Because you don't want to turn it into an over-sanitized, like, nanny state type experience, do you? You want it with, I don't know, concrete footpaths everywhere and a handrail at every single point where somebody could slip, trip, or fall. You actually want to get people out there to engage with it as you or I do. And that's a real hard balancing act from, I don't know, I'm just thinking about people in local governments who are worried that they might get sued if somebody trips over and hurts themselves in their park. It's quite interesting.
Exactly. And that's where the education in the outdoors is so important. People need to know if you're going to these places, don't stand too close to the cliff because you're going to fall off the cliff and die. And that's something that happens year after year. So people need to know these things. And unfortunately, the only way to manage that is to put a handrail in, because otherwise people have a tendency to walk off cliffs and die. But at least by getting more people there, they are connecting with nature. And then that just has the add-on effects, like the climate crisis right now, the awareness of that and how many people are involved in that. I think it's all correlated, more people are exploring outside, more people care about the environment, and it just needs to be managed in the correct way, I suppose.
Cool. Awesome. It's interesting. There's almost a direct link between, like, certainly in the UK, the government is spending less and less money on helping people get in the outdoors safely. I think when I was at school, there was always a couple of opportunities a year to go to an outdoor education centre and learn about the outdoors and how to be there safely. And it's interesting that the less funding that gets put towards that, the more people want to go out and do it, but they haven't necessarily had those foundation skills given to them. It's just an interesting link that's happening, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And people are more aware of the benefits of getting into nature. There's a number of charities that are used to help fight depression or help people with depression feel better. And all of them are to do with learning through nature and outdoor therapy. So the benefits are long known. Everybody knows it's a good thing to be doing. But yeah, as you say, maybe there needs to be more structures in place for people to safely enjoy the outdoors. So I guess more things like guided nature programs and guided walks and whatever else, which does in a sense ruin areas for people like you and I that may prefer to just be there by ourselves. But it just means, we just have to go to the other side of the mountain where none of the tourists are. You can still get close.
We just have to try a little bit harder.
Yeah, exactly. Go a bit further.
So you've got an opportunity now to ask me a question. And I have absolutely no idea what it is you're going to ask. But I'm curious, what is there that you'd like to ask me, being somebody who's had a whole career in the outdoors and now helps people grow businesses, be it in the outdoors or not in the outdoors? What's at the forefront of your mind?
So my question for you, in the next couple of years, what I'm really hoping to do is to start my own expedition company. I've been moving around the world for however many years, going to different places, seeing how things work, meeting a lot of awesome people, and just getting some great ideas and some great contacts in various different countries. And people that I already know or have worked with always ask, how do you get there? How do you do this and that? So I feel like it's only natural to create some kind of expedition program myself to get people to join me to visit these places and to go and see the world and travel in an adventurous way on the kind of trip that they probably wouldn't be comfortable doing by themselves. So guided mountain trips, kayaking trips, and so on. So my question is basically, how do you gain clients internationally? So people that I would have never met before, how can I put that product in front of them, and how would I get them to trust me as a leader that they've never met before and may not know my own background?
Well, certainly things like you're doing now, podcasts, promoting the trip you're doing up the Inside Passage next year, things you've done in the past, the more of that you can have out there about you, the more there is that people can engage with. And you're right that trust probably is one of the biggest things that people look for before they'll go and book on anything outdoor adventure wise. They want to go with an expert, and they want to go with somebody they know can actually do it themselves. So doing that personal profile thing that you're doing now and as we speak now, I think is definitely the big step in the right direction. And the more content you can get out there about you, about what you do, and about how good you are at it, the absolute better. So that would be like the first part of that. The second part is to know who your customers are. And you've started to elicit like that, but like, what age are they? What do they do for a job? Do they do these like trips self-guided for like 1 or 2 days at a time, and they're coming to you for a longer experience? Like, what's their background? Because when you start to understand that, you can then start to think about where you're going to go and find these people from. Because that's the problem in the whole of the outdoor industry, is there's loads of people and loads of businesses with brilliant products and services and opportunities, but most people seem to struggle for customers. And I think that's because people go too wide with what it is they offer, and they don't go niche enough. So they don't say, I work with mostly female sea kayakers aged 45 to 65 who've got a degree, a husband and 2 children, and have a professional job. Because when you start to get that niche, you can then start to craft everything that you do towards servicing them. And the wants and needs of a 22-year-old just passed his degree wants an expedition or a trip, and the 55-year-old female who's just retired early are 2 very, very different groups of clients. And so I think those would be my 2 pieces of starting advice for you, is to work out who that client group's going to be.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah.
That's it. And then working out how you start to get that product and that offer in front of those people in a way where they are very likely to engage with it. And so I think in today's age of social media, we're all very web savvy, and websites and Facebook marketing and this, that, and the other. I think that's all very well and good, but sometimes you end up doing, I don't know, some Facebook advertising for people who don't necessarily hang out on Facebook. And you're wasting your time, effort, and money there. So working out where you're going to find those people based upon where they hang out is definitely the next step beyond that.
Go to, what other channels could there be of putting the product in front of somebody?
So email marketing still works for some people, as does Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube adverts as well for a lot of things as well. In fact, depending upon your niche, often YouTube adverts are better and more cost effective than Facebook adverts. It just thinks about, like,
the best thing is to talk to some of those people about where do they spend their web time, and then construct your adverts to go and jump in front of them, because Google ads still work as well for some people as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Facebook isn't like the panacea of the solution to all things for all people. It's a big hole that you can pour thousands of dollars in and not earn anything back if you're not careful. So I've got a few quick fire questions for you. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, beer or wine?
Beer.
Beer. Last book that you read?
Last book that I read, The Brief History of Time.
Ooh, I haven't read that. That'll go on my list. Fast or slow?
It's a long one. Fast.
Fast. And where's your favorite outdoor location?
Mountains where you can see the ocean from.
Oh, and do you have a particular spot in mind?
No, actually.
Best outdoor moment?
Need to be to have an outdoor activity, or do I just happen to have been outside at the time?
It's up to you.
I saw a photo appear in my Facebook memories the other day, which was an amazing moment. I was working in Tanzania, and I made a drum circle with all these local kids, and we're all hitting drums and having a big dance party. So that was a good moment.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, that's the end of a few quick fire questions. You've now got 60 seconds to speak to the audience and tell them anything that you want to about the outdoors, about why you love it, about anything at all. And the floor is completely yours for 60 seconds. At the end of 60 seconds, I will stop you. So please don't go over. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, when you're ready, off you go.
So, yeah, I guess a big thing that I've learned recently that I think is really important for anyone working or just within the outdoors is the fact that to look at your position in the outdoors as an ambassador. It's very important, particularly as we mentioned earlier, there's more and more people getting into it. It's important to show these people the right way of doing things. So you really need to love what you're doing and make it obvious to others, so then they act accordingly and also love what you are then doing and then what they are doing. So hiking, exploring, getting into nature. So things like leave no trace are super important, that everyone should know what that is and how to follow. A good example of that is the other day I was hiking, and a daughter, she saw a flower and she really loved it, and her mother encouraged the daughter to pick the flower. And the daughter said to her, "You shouldn't pick it up. It's for everybody. We should leave it there." And I actually overheard, and I said as well, I agree, like, you should leave it. I kept walking and I turned around, and the mum had ripped the flower out and given it to the girl who didn't even want it. So the point being, it's very important to appreciate and respect everything around you. And it's even more so to pass that on to other people so everyone else can continue to respect and enjoy nature and the environment around us. There's a huge climate change movement right now. People are getting very aware that the things that we love and enjoy outside might not be there forever. So anyone listening really needs to try their best to work in a positive way and take positive steps to continue to enjoy that and keep it going for years to come and for the next future generations, I suppose.
Perfect.
That's it. That's all I got.
Good job. That was 60 seconds turned into 120 seconds, but I couldn't bring myself to stop you. So the last thing, Chris, as we come towards the end of this, where there's people out there who've listened to this who thought, hey, I'd like to go kayaking or climbing or hiking with this guy. Where can people find Chris Whittaker?
So people can find me on all the social medias, basically. So the name I operate under is Global Shenanigans. That's on Facebook and Instagram. So the things I'm getting up to is Global Shenanigans. The expedition I'm doing to Alaska, we've named it the For Fun's Sake Expedition. So you can find our website, ffs-expedition.com, and it's also on Facebook and Instagram, either FFS Expedition or For Fun's Sake Expedition.
Cool.
And with that, we're going to be releasing a series of episodes about the whole trip, about how to do long distance expedition kayaking, and about various cool things we find along the way. So there'll be plenty of content coming out about that over the next few months.
Awesome. And our aim is to get 100,000 people in this We Get Outdoors group. So if you want to share any of that content with this group, you're more than welcome to at any point in time.
Yes, that would be awesome. The more the merrier, for sure.
Cool. So the last thing is I'm going to ask you is, can you just pop me an email with all of those details you just told the whole world about? And I will ensure that all of your Instagram, Facebook, websites, everything else go in the notes for this interview. And then people can come and hit you up and find you wherever it is that suits them best.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I'll do that straight away.
Awesome. Cool. Chris, thank you very much. I'm sorry about the dodgy internet. Thank you for your time. I'll be in touch very soon, but thanks for spending an hour with me on the We Get Outdoors podcast.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure.